So the world we're facing today is, in a conclusion, cosmic joke, if I would really look at it the way I love to see it, is that we've been programmed to believe that we die and then we go to heaven. My perception is a little different. I think we're born into heaven. And this is where we come to create. This is where we come to have experiences. When we die, we carry those with us, but not the opportunity to make more creations, because this is a virtual reality suit that, as I was saying earlier, when I wasn't spiritual. I had nothing to do with spirituality. I was doing genetics and molecules, all these things. And then I saw the nature of the spirituality, and it was a moment of my whole life changed. And the moment was when I asked myself, when I owned all of a sudden that I have a spiritual part to me and a physical part, and I asked myself, why have both? And the cells answered the question. With a question, I asked, why have both a spirit and a body? And the cells said this to me, Bruce, if you're just a spirit, what does chocolate taste like? And all of a sudden I realized that's a short way of saying all the experiences, the emotions, what you see with your eyes, what you hear with your ears, what you taste with what you feel and touch and smell, all of that is derived from this cellular machine that converts the sensations of our world into vibration, and the brain sends the vibration back to source. And I realized, biggest mistake of my whole life, because as males, what was the programming? Males were programmed not to be sensitive. Because if we were sensitive, then we were sissies. So we got to the point of how insensitive we can be. Well, hit me and see if I cry. That's that was the test. I'm so insensitive, you can hit me. And then, of course, we grew up in a world with all these women with all their sensitivity, because that's allowed. And they look at us going, how come they're so damn insensitive? And it's the programming. And the fact is, I wasted a lot of my life realizing that our business on this planet is experiential, and to go and be creative, and to manifest experiences you want to carry with you. And the group of the Synergy Foundation, you people all here, are creating experiences in this world, and you're at a level of your experiential creations are capable of influencing a large number of other people, because that's how it's going to spread. As people let go of the programming and move into personal creativity, we all create heaven on earth when we're in love. If we got rid of the program, by then definition, everyone would be manifesting their version of heaven on earth. And I think this is the destination that we're moving into, but the old structure is in a state of collapse with new thinking. And this is what Greg and I emphasize about the new science, the new thinking that shapes the way we live. So we are definitely on the verge of the greatest possible step of human evolution ever, the coming together of a unity called humanity. And the synergy of 7 billion people coming together in the world of science leads to something called emergence. And emergence is things we couldn't even imagine right at this minute. When that many people come together, will pop out of our world. So there's a world that's so far beyond even our imagination at this moment, just looming on the horizon. And as Greg said, all the answers that we need are here, and when this comes together, it will completely turn this planet into heaven on earth, which it rightfully is.
The signals that come in, let's just stop, let's end at this moment on that other section. What does it say? It says that signals control the biology, that conventional medicine only, as it said in the science article, recognizes molecules as the source of the signals, but quantum physics, which is the parent science, and all science have to adopt to the quantum physics, so biology has to adopt the physics and recognize what quantum physics says is that energy activates these receptors as well, but I don't have to convince you of that. I already have all the literature in the papers right now that energy does the same as molecules. So energy healing is not some kind of made-up thing or some kind of, being some quackery. Energy healing is real because energy is more effective in controlling biology than molecules are, and that's according to physics. So the bottom line is we have ignored the role of energy because conventional medicine is locked back in a pre-1925 version of physics. But in 1925, when quantum physics came in, it says you must include the energy in the equation. Now the question is this. I have a cell, and I know the behavior of the cell is elicited by the receptors that read the signals. Here's this beautiful understanding, because this is what simplifies my understanding about how it all works, and then I applied it to my life, and it made such beautiful changes in my life. And it works like this. I used to clone human cells. And when I put them in the culture dishes, I'd observe their behavior and do things. And one of the things that's very interesting, if I put a cell in the culture dish when I started, and the cell is here, and I put food over here, when I start the experiment, I put the food over there and cells over here. When I come back a little later, where do you think the cell is? The cell moved toward the food, right? Okay. Experiment number 2. I put the cell over here at the start of the experiment, and I put toxin in over here. And I come back in a few minutes later, where's the cell going to be? Over here. Look, this is so beautiful, because here's the truth. At the level of the cells of which we are based, there's only 3 behaviors a cell can do, obvious behaviors that you can see. And here are the 3 behaviors. The cell can move toward a signal, the cell can move away from a signal, and the third one is actually a signal can be made in the environment, but the cell ignores it because it's not relevant. So there's actually 3 different movements: moving forwards, moving backwards, or not moving at all. Does that make sense? I mean, you can see it, right? So here's the issue. Then the behavior of the cell is actually divided into 2 kinds of behavior. When a signal is presented that the cell needs for its maintenance and its growth, the cell will always move toward the signal. When the cell is presented with a signal that threatens its life, then the cell will move away from the signal. So there's only 2 behaviors. What are they? Moving forward is growth, and moving backwards is protection. So the bottom line is this. Point. Now look at the logic, because this is the part that's like profound but simple. A cell moves forward for growth, moves backwards for protection. Can a cell move forwards and backwards at the same time? Yes or no? No. Point. Fundamental, profound nature of the point. The cells in your body are digital. When they receive signals that say growth, they will move toward things in growth. But if they're not receiving growth, then they will move backwards in protection. And the point about it is this. Then the cells in your body are going back and forth between growth and protection based on what? The perception of the environment. But since the cells are in the community, they're also the perception of the brain. So as you're thinking, what are you doing to the cells? You're giving them information about their environment. If you think that, oh my God, I can't make it through this lecture because the damn projector broke. Oh my God, what do you think my cells are going? Oh Bruce, they're hiding out. On the other hand, it's like, cool, we can make anything, we can do anything, we can survive. And what are the cells going to do? Well, they're not going to shirk backwards, they're going to move forwards in growth. Why is this relevant? Because the behavior is that clearly digitized, that it's one or the other. And the point is this, although you have 100,000 different gene programs minimum, I can take all the gene programs in your body and divide them into 2 groups. Those genes that provide for growth and reproduction. And let me explain what I mean by growth. Growth is not just from a baby to an adult. You are growing every day. Why? Because every day you're losing thousands, millions, trillions of cells a day. And if you don't replace those cells, what's going to happen to your body? You're going to experience disease and death. And so the bottom line is this. Then for you to survive on a day-to-day basis, just to keep level, you're growing all the time. And that's a requirement of the system. So the fact is this. Growth goes on, and it keeps you healthy and alive. And then the issue is this. Once you reach a certain age, then the genes, there are also genes for growth, but growth of the next generation. So the growth genes are for you or for the next generation. So those are growth genes, okay? On the other hand, growth, as I said, is only when the cells are moving forwards. But when cells are moving backwards, they exercise protection programs. So there's another set of genes in your body, or your cells, which are involved with your protection. But the point about it is this. A cell at any one time is either in growth or it's in protection, but it can't be in both. Now I got to ask you a simple question, and it's economics. Does it take energy to grow? Does it take energy to protect yourself? Well, then the point about it becomes very simple, because here's the point. When you find that you're in protection, you have to use energy. But the more protection you're in, the more energy you use. Well, where are you getting the energy from? You have a balance. You have like a checking account in your body of energy to run this body. And the more checks you write for protection, what happens to the balance? It gets less and less. And there's a point where so much protection is used that you actually now short growth processes. And this is true for like the nation right now. Right now, our budget has in excess of 50% of the U.S. budget is in protection. What does that mean? Well, all that money that's allocated for protection is not helping us grow or maintain the country in any way, because that's all put into armaments and whatever they are. And the issue is this applies to your own body. When you walk out on the street, when you wake up in the morning, you start to live, you're vacillating between growth and protection. And the issue about it is the more protection you require or you perceive you require, and that's the trick, the one that says you think you need protection, the more you put into that, the less growth you start to accommodate. And here's an interesting part. You could be so afraid, you can be scared to death. And that's the truth. The truth is this, that fear can be so great that you absolutely shut off growth so quickly that you actually die right at that moment. And the reality is, understand the balance of your health is related to the amount of energy expenditure you're putting into protection. So the bottom line, survival is actually equal to growth divided by protection. And now look at this. Turn on the news, read the newspaper, listen to the TV. What do you hear every day? More reasons to protect yourself. Well, the air's not good, the water's not good, the food's not good, these people are unsafe. Every time you turn around, what are you doing? You're walling yourself off more and more. Why? Because growth means to go forwards. What is protection? Go backwards or wall off the outside. We start to isolate when we start to become fear-bound. And as we become fear-bound, we shut down growth as a natural biological mechanism. But it's interesting. I have 50 trillion cells. Each cell can be in growth or protection. But my whole body doesn't have to be in growth and protection, so I can have a range. My body can be in, so many cells are in growth, so many in protection, so I can have a percent. So when I look at the human system, I also recognize that growth and protection is a variable, okay? And here's the interesting part about it. When I'm growing, which biological systems in my body am I using for growth? And the answer is all the organs in here called the viscera. The heart, the lungs, the digestive system, the liver and pancreas, and all these things. These are for growth. When I protect myself, which system do I use? Get out of here, I'll hit you with my lung. No, that's probably not what it is. Okay? The point is, when you're in protection, what physiological systems do you use for protection? Muscles and bones. And the interesting thing is, there's a switch in your body that switches from either the viscera or to the muscles and bones. Remember that thing we call fight or flight? Remember that adrenal system? The adrenal system is a master switch that switches between what? The two systems. The switch says, if I start to get into fight or flight, what am I going to use? Muscles and bones. Well, I shut down my viscera in the process. And that way, I have all my energy allocated to get ready to run. If I need to run away from a lion, I'm not going to start processing digestion at lunch. Why? Well, that energy might be the exact energy that it took me to get the last step so my foot doesn't get caught in a lion's mouth. So the system is intelligent. It says, when you're under threat, it will allocate the energy to where the threats are. It shuts off the visceral system. So the bottom line is simply this. In growth, the visceral system commands the somatic system. It works like this. In growth, I need water. So my body says I need water. Well, how do I get to the water? Oh, well, I move to the water. So how do I do that? Through my skeletal system. Well, who directs it? The viscera says I need water, so the skeletal system responds to the viscera's request. So the viscera administers to the need. The skeletal system administers to the viscera's need. Well, here's the interesting thing. My viscera says, Bruce, you need some water. So I say, okay, let's go get some water. So I start to go get some water, and right away, there's that lion right in front of me. And the fact is this, at the moment I see the lion, well, what do you think I'm going to do? Still go get the water? Nah. Really, at that point, my somatic system says, the hell with the water, we're running. So what's going to happen is I suppress the viscera when I activate the somatic system. And the point is, they're bound to each other. It's called the autonomic nervous system, sympathetic, parasympathetic for the words. But the fact is what? One pushes the blood into the skeletal system, and the other pushes the blood into the visceral system because the blood is nourishing it. So the bottom line is that humans are different than the individual cells because we have this graded effect. And here's the beautiful part about it. And you know this. Love is the maximum nourishment for growth. When you're in love, you will run to that place wherever it is. You have to go over the mountain or through the mountain. You will be attracted to it so much. Why? Because love provides a whole system, all the hormones and connections of the system to do what? Provide for your growth and your maintenance and your health. However, the moment you get in fear, then what do you have to do? You back away, you wall yourself off, you separate from the environment, and the consequence is this. Protection from the environment cuts you off from the environment. Cutting yourself off from the environment cuts you off from life. Now, the issue is very interestingly revealed, especially in kids in Eastern Europe where they have so many orphanages. I always thought that these kids in Eastern Europe were in the orphanages because all the wars going on over there. It turns out that's not true. The kids are in the orphanages because the parents are still having babies because of whatever their religious beliefs are, and they can't maintain them. So orphanages are dumping sites for kids that parents can't maintain, not because they don't have parents. And it turns out in the studies on these kids, virtually the largest percentage, over 80% of them, become autistic. What is an autistic child? A child that doesn't respond to the outside. Why? Because in the protection required to survive, the child walls itself off. And as a result, look at the pathology that results. These kids do not interact with our lives because they put a barrier between them and the outside world. But what else happens to them? Every growth parameter is reduced by from 30 to 40% or more. Their size, their height, their physiology. Why? Not getting love is losing the nourishment. Not getting the love means that if you're not getting love and support, then you're also then trying to protect yourself. In the absence of love is fear. And the result is fear will shut off your system. And I'll explain exactly how that happens in the human. There's a master switch. Every one of us is affected by it. The system in medicine is called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. It affects every one of us, and it works like this. Stress is something that's perceived by the brain. Remember, perception. If I think of a signal as this is a scary signal, then it's stressful to me. Well, the issue is this. If I'm in growth, I go out and move forwards toward it. But when I start to see stress, I have to protect myself. So the body gets, from the signal of the brain says, okay, mobilize the body for what? Growth or protection under stress? Protection. Well, how do you do that? And here's the answer. That the signal goes from the brain to the pituitary gland. Remember pituitary gland? Even you got that in high school. What is the common name of the pituitary gland? The master gland. What does it mean? It's the gland whose function shapes the rest of this. So the brain says to the master gland, growth or protection. When the stress level is up, the master gland is given the signal to set up the body into protection. So what happens is the pituitary gland releases ACTH, which is a hormone that goes to the adrenal glands, which are on top of the kidneys. The adrenal glands secrete what? The adrenergic hormones, adrenaline. What's adrenaline for? Fight or flight. Now here's the interesting point. When the master gland says stress, what am I going to be in, growth or protection? Okay, now here's what happens. The hormones of the adrenal gland squeeze or constrict the blood vessels in the viscera. And what they do is they force the blood from the viscera to go to the arms and the legs. Why would it do that? Think about why. Because you got to run. So you got to nourish the muscles. Well, the thing is, it preferentially puts blood into the arms and legs. Well, the question is, if it preferentially put the blood into the arms and the legs, where was the blood before it was in the arms and legs? In the viscera. What's the function of the blood in the viscera? What functions? Growth. So when I get scared, what's the first thing that happens? I take the blood from here and push it out to here. Why? Because I got to run and move and fight or flight or whatever it is I'm going to do. Well, the point is this. As soon as I got stressed, I shut down my growth mechanisms. The more stress you're under, the more chronically you suppress the growth mechanism. It's not a conscious decision. It's a part of the system called the HPA, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. The significance of it is that the releasing of the glucocorticoids and adrenaline cause a fight or flight response. Well, here's an interesting point. Okay, did you get this right away? That under stress, the chemistry of the body causes the blood to go from the gut region into the arms. Does that make sense? Okay, and it makes sense then if I don't have the blood in the gut, then the function of the gut is reduced. And that's what happens. But here's the other thing. Now think about this one, because this is like another adding an insult to an injury issue. And it goes like this. My immune system is a very expensive organ system to run. It costs a lot of body energy to run. It's a very high energy usage. If I am trying to protect myself from something that threatens me on the outside, do I use my immune system for that job, yes or no? What's the immune system function? Protection on the inside, so if bacteria or viruses get in me, okay? So here's the point. I start to see the lion. I get the release of the adrenaline and the glucocorticoids. The blood is running into my arms and legs so I could run away from the lion. What do you think happens to my immune system? Do I increase its function or decrease its function? Decrease it. And in fact, the same hormones, this is the point, the same hormones in stress are used by the medical profession to shut off the immune system in people who receive transplants of organs and tissues. Why? Because I don't want to reject them. So how do I regulate the immune system? Well, I give them these hormones. But what hormones are these? These are the hormones from stress. So it says, okay, you're not receiving a graft of an organ or a tissue, but you're under stress. What happens to your immune system? It shuts down. And the reason why it does that is conservation of energy, because I'm dealing with the external environment as the source of the threat. Well, you know this as well as I know this. When you get stressed, whether it's at school or at work, when the stress levels get real high, that's when you get sick. Why? Because when the stress levels got real high, that's when you also shut off your immune system. Important point about it is this. Then people say, well, I caught a cold, or I caught something. It's not new, it's been a long-standing understanding in medicine already, is this. Everyone in this audience is already infected with almost all the common pathogens in humans right now. They're in your blood. I can take a sample of your blood right now, and I'll show you the bacteria and viruses that live in your blood. And you say, but Bruce, I'm not unhealthy. I'm pretty damn healthy. Look at me. So what are you talking about? I'm infected. And see what the name of the organisms are given as a group. They're called opportunistic organisms. What does it mean? It means that they live in your body, but they can't thrive. They can't thrive when you're in health. When you're in health, your physiology is like in a perfect balance. It doesn't support these organisms. But the moment you get stressed, you start to shut down the immune system, and you change the physiology of your body, then these organisms take the advantage. That's why they're called opportunistic. That they were there all the time, but they can only express themselves when you're in a weakened state. When do you get in a weakened state? When you're under stress. So all of a sudden you start to get sick. You didn't necessarily catch it. You already got it. So the issue is this. What do you need to do to stay healthy? Regulate the stress. And what I will really emphasize over and over again, that remember I said approximately 5% of the people are affected or impaired lifestyle because of genetics. So their genetic defects, birth defects, affect 5%. 95% of the people don't have defects in their genes and should live a normal life. When they start to get sick, then we can't go to the genes and start blaming the genes. We have to recognize that it was the environmental signals that we were adjusting ourselves to, because when we're under stress, we automatically shut off growth. Now, you thought that was bad enough. You know, we shut down the viscera so we can run and so we're not getting growth. And we shut down the immune system because at that point it's not helping us with an external threat. Let me add the last kicker to it. And here's the kicker that's real important. Think about it. In a fight or flight situation, do you think you would use neurological reasoning and conscious, like this, that? Or do you use reflex behavior? Which one? Reflex behavior. You know what? Reflex behavior is the hindbrain, and thinking and logic and reasoning are the forebrain. So here's what happens, and most of you have experienced it. It's called exam stress. And here's how it works. The moment the adrenaline levels and the glucocorticoid levels rise to get you into a fight or flight posture, remember I told you the blood vessels in the viscera are squeezed shut and forces the blood out to the periphery? The blood vessels in the forebrain get squeezed shut and only feed the blood to the hindbrain. When you're under stress, you lose intelligence. It's required because it's not a time to be thinking, it's a time to be responding. So the issue is, and if you've been in an exam stress, you know what that means. It's like you study like 3 days in a row, you got, man, I'm going to get an A. I sit down, open up the exam book, look at the first question. I don't know the first question. You know what happens? You could feel your body begin to change right there. Adrenaline's running all over. You start to sit in the seat. You're starting to shake. Your muscles are ready to run. Why? To protect your life now. And then you're trying to think of the answer. And guess what? You cannot think of the answer to that question. You probably cannot think of the answer to the next question or the next question until you do what? Until you calm back down again. The reason is this. It's a protection mechanism that thinking is not helpful under a stressful situation. It will interfere with the response. So the bottom line is this. 3 things happen under stress, each one of them debilitating you at 3 different levels. Level 1, your viscera shuts down, your growth and maintenance mechanisms are reduced. Number 2, your immune system is shut down or inhibited to conserve energy, which then allows opportunistic organisms free run of the playground. Number 3, in response to the stress, you start operating from reflex behavior, and your intelligence in the response is now lost from the response. And all of a sudden you see the debilitating effects of stress. Now, it's not bad for an acute thing. I'm running, I fall down, I hurt myself. I can go through an acute little stress response. When does it have damage? I'll give you the simple analogy to make sense of it. Imagine a community. Let's go back to the 1950s. Remember those years when we were afraid the Russians were going to drop bombs on us, okay? So what did we do? We built bomb shelters. So the kids don't know about that, but we had bomb shelters. Now, here's the issue. There's a community. Here we are in Memphis. Kids are going to school. Factories are working. People are doing jobs. The community is in a state of growth, right? Yes or no? Say yeah. Good following on that. Good. Okay, in a state of growth. Now, here's the issue. The air raid siren goes off. Where do the people go? To the bomb shelter. What happened to the job? It stops. The community function stops. The cells or the people are not involved with the community. They're out to save their own individual lives. And the point is this. I go down in the bomb shelter and I wait, and 5 minutes later the all clear goes. Then what do? We go out of the bomb shelter, we go back to work, and it was just like that's called an acute response. It's just a momentary event. So there was a short, it's like a coffee break. We took an extra long coffee break, right? Here's where the problem comes. This is where the issue is. We're working on a job. The air raid siren goes off. We run into the bomb shelter, and we wait, and we wait, and we wait. And there's no all clear. What happens then? It's automatic. What happens? Stress, and what happens to your survival? How long can you live in the bomb shelter, or how much food did you store in there? And the bottom is this. What happens when you run out of food? Then what happens? You die. Here's the issue. Your cells are in a community. They work together in a coherent group just like the community of people. The moment the air raid siren goes off in the body saying our survival is under threat, then the cells get into the bomb shelter. The problem is most of our stresses are chronic. They're there all the time. And as long as we maintain a chronic stress, then the more stress we maintain, the more cells in my body stay in the bomb shelter and don't come back out. And the relevance is the cells will die, the tissues will undergo a disorganization, and disease will ensue. And the consequence? The stress. It wasn't the genes, it wasn't the system, it was the belief that went into it. So the bottom line is stress is the ultimate problem that we face if you got here with good genes. And I said 95 out of 100 got here with good genes. And stress does this. It alters the system. The stress signals come in at the cell membrane and activate the protein pathways, which are respiration, digestion, excretion, etc. But here's the issue. If a cell encounters stress, what can it do? I already mentioned a couple of things. Well, I'll tell you what it can do. Number one, it could wall itself off, go into the bomb shelter. And the question is, yeah, I can survive, but not for a long time doing that. So that's a temporary effect. It's the only thing I can do temporarily. Another thing cells can do is that they can secrete things in their environment to try to make their environment happier. But that's a very expensive process because if I can't change the whole environment, I'm always just wasting energy throwing it out. It's like trying to heat Memphis in the wintertime by opening your window and leaving your heater on, figuring maybe all of Memphis is going to get warm. And the bottom line is, no, that doesn't work either. So the third thing that is possible, now this is real exciting stuff. The third thing that is possible is you can adapt. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means change your genes or change your biology to respond to the stress. Well, what is adaptation in biology today? There is no adaptation in biology. Why? Because we undergo a belief system called Darwinian evolution that says what? That the changes in the genes, the first premise is all gene changes are random. What does that mean? How can I adapt if my genes change randomly? I don't know. Maybe sometimes they'll adapt. Maybe they won't. And the problem is this. Conventional biology has held for years and years and years the belief that when genes change, They only change by accident and randomly so that you can't ever control the outcome of a mutation. And so the consequence of that is conventional belief then talks about, well, you know those 95 out of 100 people, that, let's say in cancer, in breast cancer, for example, again, 5% of women have a hereditary linkage, 95% of women don't. Yet 95% of these other women who express the cancer alter the genes. So then what do? We go up to the chart and we say, well, the only way you can alter the genes is randomly, so it must have been just a random event. Cancer is random. Well, that's the belief system until we get rid of the assumption that Darwinian evolution is not the way that evolution really occurred, that there is another way. Well, what is that other way? It was first presented in 1988 in this paper that was published in the journal Nature. The Nature is a mainstream journal, and the article is called The Origin of Mutants by John Cairns, a British geneticist. And here's what he found. Listen to this, because this is one of the most important papers in the history of biological science. Why? Here's what he did. He took bacteria that had a defective enzyme. The enzyme is called lactase. Lactase is an enzyme who breaks down the milk sugar called lactose. And that enzyme is necessary to break down the sugar to extract the energy and the building blocks so the bacteria can use the lactose as a food source to power its growth and division. So these bacteria that Cairns starts with have defective enzymes for lactase. They cannot eat lactose. That's the truth. So he takes these bacteria and he puts them in a petri dish, and the only food he put in the petri dish is lactose. Talk about stress. These little bacteria guys were going, oh man, there's nothing to eat in here. Well, the problem is this. When there's nothing to eat, they can't divide. And when they can't divide, they can't reproduce the DNA, which is generally where the source of the mutations occur. And the result is they can't divide, they can't change the DNA. We expect nothing to happen. And yet, in all the petri dishes, after a few days, there are bacterial colonies growing in every one of them. And the question was that Cairns said, how the heck did that happen? Conventional understanding says that these can't divide because there wasn't any energy, so they can't change the DNA. How did they change the DNA? So when he examined the DNA, what he found was they didn't randomly change a whole bunch of genes. They focused on the genes for lactose, the lactase enzyme, and they changed just the lactase gene, even though they weren't dividing. It was a whole new mechanism, a whole new concept. And the interesting part about it is when he reported this, the British journal Nature, they wrote an editorial right after his paper. The editors wrote, they said, look, John Cairns is a distinguished molecular geneticist. We know his work for years, but this paper we have trouble with. In fact, the title of the editorial that the British journal had was, the title was A Unicorn in the Garden. The point is a little British humor, you know, it's like a fantasy in the Garden of Eden here, you know. The Americans, no sense of humor, because a week later an editorial came out in the journal Science, which is the mainstream journal of American science, and look at the title, A Heresy in Evolutionary Biology. What's a heresy? Well, that's for religious people. And it said this, there's a religious belief, and the religious belief, and I say religious, is that it's underlined in there that mutation is a continuous and random process. I'll read it for you because you may not be able to read it. The line underneath at the bottom, it says, Cairns demonstrated that bacteria can choose which mutations they should produce. Then the editors write, anything more heretical can hardly be imagined. Why are they so upset? And the answer is this. Think how profound it is. If mutations can occur as a result of adapting, then mutations are not necessarily random. And if mutations are not random, then evolution wasn't an accident. We didn't get here by accident. We got here by program. The relevance of this is that we actually got here through a process of creation and evolution simultaneously occurring, that the organisms were pre-adapting to the environment, and the signals in the environment were shaping the organism, so that evolution was not an accident. Well, of course, conventional religious, we went from religion, people wearing black coats, the new religion, they wear white lab coats, but it's just as much a religion as anything else. And the bottom line about that belief is that when we question the belief, everybody, oh, what do you mean energy healing? Ah, that's heresy. What do you mean changing the genes? That's heresy. The truth is, no, it's called science. But science has a conviction to hold the truth, especially as the pharmaceutical industry, again, is trying to impress upon us because they're selling us a lot of things. So the bottom line is this. What does this say? Well, this paper, let me explain. The paper that Cairns' paper came out in 1988. That was over 12 years ago, okay? This paper in Scientific American is in 1997, so that was 9 years after. Point about this paper. I have to read it for you because you won't be able to read it. I'm going to use my theatrical. I'm on a stage, so I'm going to read it theatrically. It says, evolution evolving. Here's my theatrical part. New findings suggest mutation is more complicated than anyone thought. First line, 9 years ago, John Cairns. And the point was, new findings 9 years ago? Where have these guys been? And the answer is this. For 9 years, they consistently tried to undermine Cairns' findings. For 9 years, they did that. When this paper was published in Scientific American, they're not saying that Cairns was right. What they're saying is this. They can't seem to find another explanation, but they're still looking for it. Because the idea is, it appears to be right, but it can't be right. So, but now it's a few more years down the road, and now we have another understanding. So now I'm going to show you this. And this is out of Science, the journal Science. So it's not a chart that I'm making up. This is a chart out of the journal Science. This is the flow chart of information before Cairns. This is the Darwinian flow chart. How does it work? It says organisms at the top mature and they mate. They create variants. So let's say two dogs. Two dogs at the top mate. They make a litter of puppies. The puppies are all variants of the parents. That what happens is, we also know there's a runt at one end of the litter and there's the bulldog one at the other end of the litter, so there's a range. When the puppies have to leave the litter and they have to go out and fend for their own lives, what's going to happen to the runt? Is it going to make it? No, it's not going to be able to survive. It won't be able to compete. So what happens is nature selects the strongest one to survive and gets rid of the weakest one. That's what selection is all about, natural selection. So it says this, that those that are capable of surviving mature start to cycle over again. That all the variations arise in the part of the reproduction phase, which is the belief is when the DNA gets altered. Now, I'm going to show you the new flow chart based on Cairns, and it becomes very relevant for this reason. Let me first explain it before I show it to you. You see the box variants? I'm going to show you in the new chart, it's on the right-hand side, but there are 3 variant boxes. So it goes organisms, variant, selection, and I want to talk about those first. So let's take a look at the chart. The chart is this. Organism, and there are 3 variants. Genes of DNA metabolism, genotype variation, phenotype variation, selection. Let me explain what they represent. Phenotype variation. Phenotype is the physical expression as you see it. So your phenotype is how you look physically in the world. Genotype is the underlying genetic code that programs for this structure. The box on the top, there's a new name for it. So let me give you the new name because it makes much more sense. The box on the top is not called genes of DNA metabolism anymore. There's a new name. It's called genetic engineering genes. What did they find? That in every nucleus, in every cell in your body, you have genes whose function it is to rewrite the other genes if they encounter stress. So the significance is, then you're capable of rewriting your genes. But here's the most important part. What was not even included in the other chart, but is now included, and it wasn't there before? And the answer is these 2 boxes right here, the environment and organisms' perception of the environment. Look where the arrows go. What can the environment do? Follow the arrow. It goes up, across, number 6 and number 5. What does it say it can do? The environment can cause the genetic engineering genes to rewrite your genes. Number 2, they can change your genetic code. That's what it does. Now here's the important one. Organisms' perception of the environment. What can it do? It can rewrite your genes, number 4, or it can change your physiological body to respond to the environment. What's the relevance of all this? Well, the environment was never even included in conventional biology. Now the environment is found to be very important, and more so, remember the slide I showed you about perceptions and belief? Overlay the top. And look, organism, environment, that's the slide we showed, is the environment. Organism's perception. We said perception is belief. And what does it affect? The cells. In what way? By rewriting the genes and changing the structure of the cells. The bottom line is this. Your belief in a stressful situation will rewrite your genes to accommodate the stress. And the relevance about that is that if the stressful environment is something that's not even real out there, you will change your biology to fit what you believe. And the issue is this. Then specific organs and specific tissues of the body are connected to the beliefs. There's a great book by Louise Hay called You Can Heal Your Life. There's a glossary in the back, and she's done great research to reveal that specific stresses affect different portions of your body. And as a result, if you understand which portion of your body is affecting the stress, then you can deal with it by understanding what emotions are eliciting that stress. And I'll give you, it's just very critical to understand this, is that the symptoms of your body are your body telling you that you're under stress. That's clear. But the point about it is your body is trying to tell you with a symptom, deal with the stress. Because if you're not dealing with it, we're going to have a problem in here. And here's the interesting point. When we go to conventional medical care, what do they do with the symptom? They cover it up. So you don't feel anything anymore. You know what the analogy is like? Because this is true. When I was working in graduate school, I was working in a Chevy dealership to make some money. And Friday afternoon, all the guys had cleaned up their tools. The shop is ready. Everybody's closing up. It's almost 5 o'clock. Everybody wants to go home. And this woman came in, and she'd been in a couple of times before. This is her third trip. For what's the issue? She came in because the little light on her dashboard says service engine now keeps going on. And she got very upset by this, and it's like, I brought in 3 times. She started to go through all the stuff. So one mechanic, brave guy, says, I can fix it. So he takes the car to the back to the bay. He gets inside the car. He goes under the dashboard. He pulls out the little light bulb. And then he has a smoke and hangs out. Why? Because obviously it takes a long time to do this work, so you can charge him, And the bottom line is, after about 20, 30 minutes, he brings the car back out front and says, it's fixed. And the woman got in the car, and guess what? She was happier than anything could be. She drove away. The damn light didn't come on again. The problem is this. When we go to rid ourselves of symptoms, we are pulling the light out. The symptom is just the information that something is going wrong. That if you cut off that information about the symptom, you're telling the body, I'm not listening to you. And what's the body going to do? It's going to find another way to bring you some more information, but the next time it's going to be worse news than it was the first time. And the issue is this. Symptoms are telling you that you're not running in a coordinated fashion with your body, and that becomes important.
Hi, dear friends and cultural creatives. Welcome to this new format of my newsletter. I'm really not much of a typist. I use these 2 fingers. It takes a long time, but I found the mouth works a lot faster. So I thought, how about if I try this video newsletter and see if I can get some very interesting information to you at this very important time. As you know, I've been talking about the evolution, and the evolution is imminent. And you can feel it now in the world with the crises that we're facing, especially the debt crisis, which is manifesting all around the world at this very moment. Why is this relevant? Because there's a biological awareness and important understanding for self-awareness and self-teaching that comes out of the world's financial crisis. Very simply this. Money is the equivalent of energy, so you can buy energy with your cash. And the significance about that is if you're frugal and take care of your money and keep a balance, then you always have this energy in your bank account, energy in which you can live. However, obviously, if you waste this energy, then you actually interfere with your own survival. So you don't really want to go out and just throw away your money. And so basically, I really want to show you that this is an important insight into the nature of our own health and our biology and the world we create in this regard. That our biological system, the cells, rely on energy. Without energy, there's no life. So fundamentally, you have an energy budget that gives you life. And in fact, in the body, energy is in coins called ATP, molecules that represent units of energy. So in fact, biologists refer to ATP as the coin of the realm. The significance of ATP is this, is that ATP molecules are like units of gasoline, like gallon of gas, that are used to fuel our biological processes. So to stay alive, we have to have all this ATP. So there's an ATP account in your body right now. But the question is, how do you use this ATP? And now here's an important fact, that 25% of the total energy in your whole body is used to operate your brain. So all of a sudden you start to recognize that the brain uses energy at the rate of muscles of a marathon runner. So brain and muscle activity are pretty much the same. And so why is this important? Because as you're using your brain, as you're using your thinking, you are actually using energy. Now, why is this relevant? The answer is very simply this. Because the way we've been using our thoughts are not necessarily productive. As a matter of fact, sometimes our investments of our thoughts are actually counterproductive because our thoughts create a reality that we then have to overcome. So basically it says that we must start to become aware of our thoughts. And why is this important? Because thoughts represent units of energy. Every time you have a thought, you use energy. Why this becomes relevant is, if I give you a checkbook for your bank account, you don't go down the street and just write checks to people like, oh, hey, you're a nice looking guy, here's 10 bucks for you, and oh, here, little girl, go out and buy yourself a little car, here's $1,000 for you. And you don't give away your money. Why? Because giving away your money is giving away your life. So basically, you become very frugal when you have a checkbook in your hand. Now what I'm trying to tell you is this. You have an energy budget in your body. The energy is what keeps you alive. When you start using energy and writing checks where you get no return from your energy, then it's exactly the same as writing checks out of your bank checkbook and giving away your cash. So why this becomes important is the biology of belief reveals how our thoughts create our reality. And if you start investing in thoughts that are counterproductive, thoughts like fear, or what am I going to do, and how am I going to escape this problem, or how's this going to go wrong, and all these other kinds of thoughts that are negative kinds of thoughts, then realize this, you are actually not just using your energy for having these thoughts, but these thoughts are also what come into your reality. What you focus on with your thoughts, your brain will manifest as reality. A wonderful quote from Bhagavan Das, I really love this one. He says, worry is a form of praying for what you don't want. Think about that. When you worry, you keep on your mind objects that get you nervous and scare you, and the more you keep them in your mind, the more the mind converts that into reality. So, what's the message for this month? It's to become energetically frugal with your money in your body, and that is this. Your thoughts use energy. Your interactions with life use energy. So if you want to survive, then realize one simple fact, and that is this. Everything you do in your life, you put out energy for. Therefore, start to review what you're doing in your life. Because if you're putting your energy into things you cannot change in this world, that is exactly the same as writing a check and just throwing away your money to the outside because you get nothing back from it. So think about this very interesting reality, that you have this energy checkbook. And every time you use energy, you have to say, is the use of this energy going to enhance my life, or is it just wasted energy? Am I getting involved in a political argument with people where I'm going to use up all my energy and will I have changed the world? No. Am I going to use up all my energy to try to convince other people to change their life or change their way of living to make them even healthier? And they're not ready to do that? I'd be wasting my energy. So here's an interesting thought. If I gave you an energy checkbook and asked you to write a check every time you had to have a thought, you would have to then ask yourself, is this thought going to enhance my life, or is this thought going to take away from my life? And then when you start to realize that, you start to direct your actions where you put your energy into things that enhance your life and give you an opportunity to survive and to go beyond survival and really into thriving. So the point is this, we are facing some rough times. The more thoughts you put into the negative aspect, the more thoughts you put into the fear, not only are you just wasting your energy, but as in the biology belief, these negative thoughts, these negative stresses actually impair your immune system and bring on disease itself. So, for this month, think about it this way. You're living on a budget, and that budget is actually what represents our life. And if you're going to use your budget wisely, Put your thoughts, put your energy, put your money behind those things that enhance your personal life and enhance the community that you live in and support the evolution that we're going into, rather than wasting your energy fighting the old system that's falling apart. This is your opportunity to get out of that system and build something more sustainable, something we could all live on, something that we can all thrive on. And I look forward to all of you seeing that each one of us is participating in this evolution. And I really hope that you can understand that my wishes are for you is to conserve your energy to create beautiful rather than worry and manifest the other. Thanks for listening to this message, and I surely hope you have a wonderful month, and I look forward to talking to you soon because this evolution is imminent.